This is Pam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Tricia Parido, and we're going to talk to her for the first time on the Pam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing amazing. And yourself?
I'm doing all right. So before we get to the heart of your story, we ask every guest a couple questions before we get detailed into your particular area. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Ooh, what motivates me? Hmm. Living fully, right? Like actually experiencing anything and everything that's in my environment motivates me. And the reason I do what I do is because I want to give the gift of experiencing living from a space of feeling free to everybody else.
Mhm.
Right? Like I found it and I just want to give it. I want to
Yeah,
give
you want to pay it forward. That's a lot of times like somebody find in life you learn. And from those lessons learned, if you can pay it forward by being like a teacher or a therapist or a coach, or a music producer, that you teach from the benefit of your experience.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So, like the one your trademark is this total emotional performance. So we'll try to get into the idea for that because that's we're going to focus on it in this episode. Like the subject is the case for total emotional performance. Like, well, what is total emotional performance?
Mm. Total emotional performance is the ability. This is going to be really short, right? Like this is going to be super short, guys, but it's the ability to watch things arrive in your life, sit in them and move through them in a state of agility, meaning I can bend, flex, um, be resilient in any fashion that I need to without harsh rigidity, without severe judgment, without negativity, impulsivity, et cetera, right? Like, so emotional performance is that ability to live life fully regardless of what's going on.
That sounds like, well, being a musician, what I would kind of call it, like give a like an example in jazz, there's the idea that there's no bad note, there's an opportunity. So if you're in modal jazz and fusion jazz, instead of being hung up on the composition and hitting every note exactly as it is on the page, you are in the moment. And if somebody hits a chord or a note that's unexpected, you know how to actually ramp to that, and it's not going to be a stressor that you actually, have 10,000 hours or more of experience, and it's going to be an opportunity. It's not going to be a bad scene.
You know what? That's spot on. And I wouldn't necessarily refer to myself as a musician, but as somebody who took 11 and a half years of classical piano, I, do know exactly what you're talking about. And I love jazz. And yes, it's like the finding the beauty in where other people see chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that you can go from something discordant to something that's harmonic to something that's a little, off key. Because
Hmm.
kind of like our wheelhouse is to be able to go into a little bit of discordance, a little bit of like chaos, and then come back to a theme and stretch out. I think in life, an example, like if you're a TEDx speaker, right, or you're a public speaker, right, and you've got something all set in your mind, but you read the room and it's like a comedian. If that joke's not kicking, you switch to the next thing. Like you don't stay in the zone that's not working.
100%. I mean, emotional agility in and of itself, right, is that ability to feel everything and still choose how you lead. And most people are either stuck in suppressing their emotions or drowning in them. Whereas
Hmm.
emotional agility is that sweet spot where emotion becomes a tool, not a trigger. And then
Yeah,
when you master that, you stop getting hijacked by your own nervous system.
we don't get triggered into like that road rage incident, or something that's similar. I think a lot of people they might be like on the hair trigger because they're not being like situationally aware of their what's going on inside and outside. Part of being an artist is a creative is we're able to take in like the subconscious and the conscious, the inner and the outer, and synthesize it. And some people they kind of can't do that, or they minimize, or they don't give themselves a permission structure to do that.
100%. And there's a lot of different directions you can go with that, but when we look at, you know, where society sits today, right? Like everybody's been sold this idea that if you just think positively, everything is going to shift, right? But if your body still thinks you're in danger, or
Yeah,
if your emotions are still coded, for protection mode, no affirmation is going to rewire that.
yeah, with a
Well,
wolf
we
at the
don't
door.
need, we don't need all this fluff. We need tools that honor our human experience and upgrade our emotional skill set. And yeah.
Well, that's like the thing I've always kind of mentioned is in the show we've talked about the idea that people have these like the wolf at the door, like human beings had the real wolf at the door, right? And then you probably would stay with your clan to have protection. And now we have these virtual wolves at the door. Like something's like it's not a physical, but it still feels like it still stresses you out like it was an actually wolf at your throat, but it's not
Mhm.
physically, but psychologically or internally it feels like it.
Sure. Um, and there's a lot of external derailment. There's a lot of external control factors. I mean, you brought up this digital world that we're in, right? Like we're all sitting around on a virtual space. We're in a virtual space. I don't even know what state you're in, right? Like I don't know what time of day it is for you. And so you get these, and this is going to sound cliche, but you get, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. So it's that, oh, my social media, right? Like it's not I haven't become an influencer yet or whatever. It's that need for external validation or reward to feel valuable, to feel valid, to feel any kind of worth. And it's like, oh, if they're not clicking like, if they're not commenting, or if I haven't again gone viral, people don't like what I have to say and I must be wrong. So I'm going to scrap it and go back to the drawing board instead of owning your passion and your truth and,
Yeah, yeah.
being driven from your internal space.
But sometimes it's like because of this immediacy of their reaction in the ether. Because I'm in my day job, I'm a software guy. So I
Mhm.
understand a lot about the ether. I understand about the algorithms. I understand about that structure. So I have a left and right brain. I'm an artist and I'm a software guy. So, but the
Wow.
idea is, a lot of times people want things to be perfect or they want that instant feedback, instant gratification. But I was always a fan of kind of the unsung hero, like a Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground before they got big. Like the artists like Dylan before he got big. You
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
idea, like when Hendrix was like just starting reading his story, and he was playing side gig with Little Richard or Isley Boy before he was a big thing, and
Mhm.
sometimes he would actually go in a recording studio and play something that came to him. He actually had the situation where he played a song that he said the universe gave to him, but didn't match the session he was in. And they said, like, what are you doing? And he said, well, I can't give that. I have to put it down because the universe gave it to me. And because he had that kind of mindset, I mean, he got fired from that gig, but that was what got him to be that superstar that he became because he would actually listen to that intuitive nature of when he got that download from the cosmic world, he took it and went with it,
Yeah.
which a lot
Yeah.
of people won't do because of the consequences. Like, he got fired. But like that's just a firing in that moment, but it led him to another moment.
Mhm. Well, and I think a lot of and maybe even most high achievers, right? Like they get stuck in noise, right? Like the expectations, past traumas, overperformance patterns, and it can have a negative impact, especially if you don't know how to decode the noise
Mm-hmm.
cognitively, emotionally, and physically.
Yeah, I think approval addiction is something you're kind of referring to. We haven't hit it directly, but the idea today is like if you don't, like you said, you don't get the 1,000 likes, it's not worth doing. Where like, what if one person liked it and they end up being the person that gives you an opportunity? Doesn't matter if a million people liked it. If the one key person, cause you put it out there and the opportunity comes, it's not that metric is not measured by how many people saw it. It depends on who actually appreciated it, right? And that's not always the metric's not going to always show you that.
Yeah, it's who is this meant to touch today? Right? We can't control everything. And I think, if we could, let go of some of those control needs. I love that you tossed into the arena here, you know, the addiction to, approval, validation addiction, right? Like all of these things are process behavioral addictions. And as a master addiction specialist, right? Like I'm super passionate about that. And, usually people hear that you're an addiction specialist and they, automatically go to the down, the out, the ill, the poorly functioning, that people
Mhm.
that need to be removed from their life and sent away to be fixed, quote unquote. And sure, there's, a whole, everything is a spectrum, right? A level of severity. And so, yes, there's some really high severity situations and cases where, sure, we got to take a break from living and kind of do a big fat reset. But there's also the everyday people that have conditioned themselves so deeply to need things, to depend on things, to rely on things. And I'm here to tell you, even the most non-alcoholic drinker has inappropriately given alcohol an emotional purpose at the end of the week. If there's an emotional purpose for it, it's the wrong relationship to have. If it's pairing well with your steak, awesome. When your steak is done, the wine will be done, and you're not looking to alter yourself in any way. But we use the gym the same way. We use
Mhm.
the thumbs up, the stars, again, the popularity contest the same way. We use online shopping the same way. I've got to have, right? We use
Yeah.
comparison, got to look like the Joneses. And so there's, just your morning coffee, right? Like if your day crumbles without it, like you need to work on your relationship with it because you've given it an emotional purpose
Too
that
much
is
power.
inappropriate.
Yeah, you give too much power to something,
Mhm.
then it's like how much control do you have? And like, yeah, you said, it can be everybody's always thinking about like, the really heavy things like, like narcotics and alcohol and smoking and all kinds of things, like gambling. But you can be addicted to your phone, right? You got your phone in your bed
Oh,
at
that's
night
like,
and you're not turning it off. You're addicted to that screen time, right? And
what
it's
can
actually
you
probably
do?
interfering
Roll
with your
over and pick it up.
with, with your sleep, and it's like, all kinds of things going on where you say, well, I'm not addicted. It's like, well, your cell phone's in your bed with
Yeah.
you.
So there we are with that level of severity, right? So if we rolled over in the morning, the first thing we did was grab a bottle of booze, people would think we had a problem. But it's totally okay to need to do this the second we wake up. No, it's an addictive behavior. It's a process addiction. Yeah. So anyway, I love that you threw that in there because, I'm pretty passionate about helping people be a whole lot more resilient in their life, so that if they have to miss their 6 a.m. spin class, they aren't like the most negative being on the planet, snapping at the whole world all day long.
Also, the concept of perfectionism, like in the
Mhm.
arts and music. a lot of times the computer has been like it's a big help, and it levels the playing field, but it also causes this issue where people want to be perfect. And a
Mhm.
lot of, like, I've always explained to people as like a teacher, as a musician producer, that in the past when you couldn't go back and fix everything, that sometimes you allowed the happy accident to be like a painter. Like once you have that brushstroke and it hits the canvas, like you could try to overlay it and change it, but a lot of times it is what it is. You committed. And so
Yeah.
when you make those commitments and it's harder to undo them, then sometimes like keep it simple and not being overly complex, it can be more vulnerable and more true to what your initial intent was. And then if you keep on going back to something, do 1,000, like 100 takes on something versus going for the earlier take, or realizing like that you don't have to keep on going at it, because like as you go at it, you destroy the work.
Well, I always like to ask people, like to just kind of step into my world of self exploration, but like what if everything that you've been managing, perfecting, controlling was actually a signal to you that you're ready to lead differently, right? Like those things that are imperfect and they're holding you back. Like, what if it's a signal to you that you're ready to do something different, to experience something different? Not everything needs to be fixed.
But yeah, it's like a lesson learned, right? It's like it's a step on the ladder. Like
Yeah,
you got to step to get to the top. Every step is actually necessary for you to get there.
right. So what everybody needs to do, and I don't mean to sound all directional, guys, but anyway, because I'm certainly not trying to be, but what our body is screaming at us to do in all of those real tense, whether it's anxiety, depressive states, the real heavy weighted, or just the tension, what our body's trying to get us to listen to it, right? Like it's giving us signals, it's giving us cues. And so it's not that we need to be fixed. We need to allow ourselves to be felt. And I'm
Mhm,
talking about our relationship with ourselves, not with other people. We need to
mhm.
be felt, we need to be understood, and we need to allow ourselves the ability to upgrade, right? Like give ourselves permission
Like some
to
grace, some
to
grace.
yeah to either, I like to call it upgrade, um because anytime you're growing, changing, shifting, morphing, it's always an upgrade, even when it doesn't come out perfectly, like the composition, that the crescendo just kind of fell flat or whatever it is. That's okay, right? Self actualization isn't an ending zone, it's something that continuously happens. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, sure, we need the foundational things, but that self actualization, that's constant. That's
Yeah.
always. That's an always forever living, breathing thing. And if it's not for you, then maybe, I don't know, start looking at that.
Well, a lot of times you have to, like, listening skills. I've always had this idea, like, where it kind of starts with listening to yourself and listen to your own body. And a
Hmm.
lot of times, like, people ignore what their body or what their spirit or soul or heart's really telling them, because they override it and say, well, I really don't feel that, because I don't. It's like the looking glass self. You don't want to deal with it. Like if you don't actually accept it, the vulnerability, or accept the happy accident, or accept that it wasn't we didn't go from 0 to 100 today. You hit like 50, okay? But you didn't hit, it wasn't 10. So like you have a little win, you know. But you
Yeah.
could look at it like you lost, but you could, like, well, maybe you didn't. Maybe it's necessary for you to figure out what your limits are, and then see if you
Mhm.
can expand from there.
Absolutely. Right? You gotta partner with your emotions instead of control your emotions. Like, hey, live for yourself first without feeling guilty, selfish, punished, or restricted. That's what I like to say. And it's like, you got to be your best friend. You've got to be in love with you. You've got to be your own partner. Like, even when we're in relationships, right? Like, we're still two very unique individual beings. And how boring would the world be if everybody thought, felt, and had the same opinions. And so we're always so focused on persuading somebody to come over to our way of thinking, instead of leaning in the stance of a learner and just seeking to understand at a deeper level from a different perspective, whether you want to take that perspective or not, but learn how to be accepting of all of the different beautiful things. But so, we don't necessarily need to control our emotions. We need to partner with them. We need to allow them to arrive, respect them, and watch them go, right? Like, grief is a great example, because grief comes in waves, and it takes you by surprise, and it can be super heavy, and other times it can be kind of light and airy. And I've been sharing about this a lot with several of my clients, and just from a space of my own. Like, my mother passed away 3 years ago, but there's still those little waves, and it's not a heavy, sad, tearful grief. It's just like, I wish mom could have seen this. But all I do is I let it come, and then it gets to go. Whereas people that don't know how to be emotionally agile will let it arrive, and they're like, oh crud, now I got this, and I'm just going to sit with it, and I'm going to be sad, and I'm going to ruminate, and I'm going to wallow, and I'm going to languish. Yeah. And so instead of just going, oh, right, like, this gets to be a part of who I am as a being.
Yeah, it's like you got to be able to navigate like a captain in a storm with a ship. Like, it's not always going to be calm waters, and you don't want to be with a captain that's only dealt with calm waters.
Yeah. But well, we need the captain that's actually, right, like, had some rocky seas, so that
they can handle it when it comes.
The storm. Sure.
But also, like, the idea of everybody says they like individualism, but a lot of times they tend to actually value conformity. And it seems to be like a real conflict, because you can see that, in the ether of the internet, because everybody says they want you to be an individual, but if you've got to do something that hits the algorithm, well, something that hits the algorithm is going to be a replication of somebody else's pattern. So the things that are successful are just these replications of these same patterns, but you're saying you want to be individual, but the individual thing might not actually hit the algorithm.
Well, and I love that you said that, and it's just like, made me like super joyous on the inside there, because I completely different topic, but same concept perspective, right? What I see is I see it in the self-help addicts, right? Like, so they're constantly, they're, again, the comparison, they're like, oh, I'm going to Tony Robbins, he's going to fix my world, or I'm going to read Mel Robbins' book and it's going to fix my life, or I'm going to, hang out with Brendon Burchard. All these people I love, all of these people are part of my, my own esteem and work and all of the things. But here's the deal. I know a secret that most people don't know. Most people go to these things, these events, these seminars, the workshops, the one-day events, the book read, whatever. They go expecting to have their life morphed by this method or modality, right? Concept. So they're trying to fit their life in so that it'll change. So, maybe 5 people come out and they've got woohoo. But for the most part, because you're trying to fit your life, right? Like, I don't know, square peg, round hole. You're trying to fit your life into somebody else's method or modality, instead of listening, active listening to that method, to that modality, and looking at it and saying, how can I add, edit, delete? Sorry for my dog. Change, shift, morph it, make it my own, incorporate it into my life so that it serves me and as a unique being. And this is where the difference comes. So if you can say, and this is, all of my programs are seated in evidence-based practice. They come from, behavioral psych theories and all of the things, right? But it was, I pulled it out and it was like, how can we find a practical application for this? Not just something that swims around up in our brain. How can we find a practical application for this? So when I say I was client zero, I mean it. I was client zero. And of course, it took me way longer than it takes any of my clients, because now I give it to them, teach them how to make it their own, right? Use it for themselves. How does this serve you in your life? Not how I did it, not how I
like
used
a
it.
cookie, not a cookie cutter. Like
There's
you can't be a cookie cutter. Like you have to apply it to each individual human being has their own experience, their own situation. So it has to be a customized thing. But everybody always wants that one size fits all, and it usually doesn't work.
no. And so here's the deal. I mean, that's the difference, is the one size fits all, because the lessons are the same, but how each person uses it is different. And it's giving them that permission right out the gate. Like, hey, come, right? Like, I'll help you figure out how this can serve you. Because after 12 years, I know it can, and do it well. But and that's the other thing, is if your stuff can't serve people, if it's not a fit, don't sell it to them. Send them to the next person, because I think that's part of the big problem. But anyway, back to what we were talking about, because I don't want to get on a soapbox. But it's that conformity. We want to fit in, but we want to stand out. So we want to be like other people, right? But also get our own accolades, instead of just saying, wow, how can I let myself show up as me? Like, I don't know, I didn't prepare anything for today. Like we shared, and here I am, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like a lot of times, like people want to fit in the box. Like in business times, at least in software design, we're always looking for kind of outside the bell curve. Like we're looking for those creative people who are like not in that middle zone, because that's not what we usually want. But the problem, a lot of organizations say they want that person might be neurodivergent, might be super creative. They don't fit in the box. Maybe they don't work 9 to 5. They have some, maybe not going to fit into the normal structure of a bureaucracy. And so like I over time I discovered that I don't work well in the Fortune 500 type of software companies. I work better in the startups, where I can wear different hats and kind of be wherever I need to be. And so I realized about myself where I needed to be, and I'm in that zone. But a lot of times people don't actually look in the mirror and know where they really fit. They're trying to force themselves into that box and then wonder why it doesn't work.
Well, and you know what? I'm right there with you, because, even my own practice has evolved over time. I mean, when I launched my business, it was to serve people coming out of treatment, mental health or addiction treatment, so that I could help them with the now what's next, as they went back to the same house, spouse, kids, bills, job that they were previously incapable of handling on an emotional level. That was that. But it has evolved into so much more. And like, I wasn't setting out to create a new method, right? Each time that something else unfolded, right? Like I was just set out when I started this whole thing, right? I was trying to survive my own chaos, and the cycles of codependency, the cycles of anxiety, all trauma responses, pushing through, right? And then continuing to push through the success while privately unraveling, right? Like I had to continue to self-actualize. So I knew how to cope, but I didn't. Well, I know how to cope. I was pretty good at performing, on the surface, out there in front of people, but I didn't know how to feel safe, right? Like in my own body, how to hear it, how to lead with emotional power, or how to live in alignment with the version of me that was, knocking on the door, right? Like, you need to become. So I realized, like, hey, you know what? this coping stuff that I'm doing, it's just rehearsed survival,
Mm. Kind of phoned it
right?
in.
It's not transforming anything. So, and I get it. We're, all here to teach coping skills and tactics, etc. But if we're just coping, we're not transforming. And what I know about high performers, myself included, right? Like we're really great at faking fine.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was building my systems and my frameworks, which turned into more, so we got that build that advanced emotional intelligence, bring in the personal esteem, and then filter that into all of our relationships with ourselves and others, and condition it. And then what we bring in that whole total emotional performance, where there's a whole gamut of things. It wasn't. I didn't build any of this to be a band-aid for anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it wasn't a band-aid for me. It's the way I eat, sleep, breathe, live, and experience every moment of my existence. So it's not about reframing my thoughts and moments, right? It's like a full evolution that blends performance psychology, I don't know, trauma recovery, some real life practice of just that emotional agility, and so I think gosh, if we look at constant evolution, right, and how do we want to be, and how do we want to be experienced, and how do we want to be seen as we go out into the world with our great big idea. We have this emotional agility. We don't have as much burnout. We don't
Yeah.
have perfectionism. We don't have as many control needs. We don't have all the stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of noise and then performative, like trying to keep up with the Joneses and trying, like a lot of times people like, what is it that you're trying to do? What is
Mhm.
it that you actually want? And when you look in the mirror, are you actually, when you get up in the morning, are you excited? Are you exhilarated? Are you really happy with your purpose? Or you feel like, oh, I'm just going back to that cube and I'm kind of just barely getting by?
Yeah.
Instead of, it's my idea. It's like your own business. An entrepreneur is like, yeah, you have to deal with, like, you're paying all the bills, you're running everything. That can be stressful. That you could burn out because you're spending like excess. You're doing 150%. Like, well, how long can you do that?
Well, people look at me like I'm a crazy nut when I say, hey, take a vacation from social media or posting, or better yet, schedule it all and then let it run, right? Like, I get the algorithms, etc. But if your relationship with yourself, if you're rolling into the office and it's like, "Ah, I gotta write the blog, I gotta I don't know, write the blog, do the content curation, and then I gotta show up for my clients, and then now you're just doing the busy work, right?
Mhm.
Your energy suffers, and then so does your passion, right? And that passion that fueled your desire to start the thing in the first place. And I think, so that's that whole hustle culture, that
Yeah.
I was talking about earlier. We breed it. And so nothing bad's going to happen if you take a 2 week break from social media because you just don't feel like engaging.
Well, it's like recovery. Like if you're an athlete, like I'm a mountain biker, right? So when I'm mountain biking, then I gotta, to be able to climb the hill and to be able to go down the hill, you have to be able to recover. And if
Yeah.
I don't recover from my climb, then I can't hold on the way down the creek bed and I'm gonna crash. You have to kind of gauge over time, as an athlete always does, like what are you capable of doing, and did you overstep it? So then you get an injury, right? So with the good athletes, like they know themselves, they know their bodies. Like if they're not going to go and get themselves into an injury on purpose, right? It might happen because like it's like unforeseen, but they're not going to go and grind themselves into the ground.
Well, we have to lead in freely from on our own terms. So people think of, pausing as something that's just this, let me take a pause really quick and it's short. But the true art of pause is knowing for how long. And sometimes that pause is indefinite. Sometimes we're like, I need to pause. I have no idea when and or if,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I'm going to re-engage whatever this is. And so, and that's okay. Because if you can hear what your cognitive body, your emotional body, and your physical body is telling you, and what it's saying is, it's time for a break, right? I'm going to crash. I'm going to burn. My knees are going to buckle, whatever it is. Like if you are listening and you're hearing, then you can create a rhythm, right? Like that natural rhythm that allows for pause. Like, we don't have to be in staccato all the time,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Punk rock song.
Slow the metronome down, man. Bink, 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 bink.
Well, they have kind of music. Sometimes you have the space between the notes or the silence between the notes. And
Yeah,
some music today is it's so it's all groove. There's no there's no break. There's no there's no song structure. It's
I
all
love the whole, what was that stanza that was empty with nothing in it.
yeah.
And it was like
I like
my
the
teacher would
silence.
say, count the full 16 count or whatever, it was supposed to be in there. And it was like, and then it was great to just pick your hand up and be like, boom, back into it, and you're right. That is just a quality and an art form that is just missing.
Yeah, because a lot of people have gotten so into groove and so into filling the space, and that kind of goes toward like speaking. Like if you're speaking, having a conversation, and you don't leave the time to actually comprehend what the other person said, right? You don't take it to pause, is and so there's no like silence between the notes. It's like filmmakers that don't have dialogue in a scene and let the actor do everything with their hands and their eyes. In the old movies from the 70s and the 60s, you can see there's no patience in the modern audience because they say, oh, the pacing's so slow. Right? A lot of times the older films, people like they don't have the patience. They read books and like they're 300 word, 1,000 word books, and people only want to read a 70,000 word book. They can't.
Oh,
They don't have the patience anymore for the softer, intricate things that are built up over time. Is like, why can't we take a little time?
yeah. Well, you're hitting it all on the head right there, because there's no active listening. There's no, hmm, well, I shouldn't say there's no, but it's a skill that's lacking. Like that, seeking clarity or confirming that you are on the same page. So, like, so what I hear you saying is XYZ, is that accurate, before going into, or how about even just asking me if I want to hear what you have to say? I mean, I love, and probably could practice it even more in my life, because again, over time, you get complacent in areas. But is like when somebody wants to share something with you, ask them first, like, hey, you so I listen correctly. Do you want me to just listen to hear what you have to share? Or would you like for me to listen with the intention of giving you feedback, support, guidance, right? Especially people in my line of work, because hey, I know you're coming to me for feedback, direction, coaching, teaching, training. So turning that hat off when you go out to deal with your spouse, that's key, right?
Mhm.
Like you gotta, ooh, get out of that headspace. And I think, that's a lost, you know, relationship respect, right? Like whoever you're talking to.
Yeah, I think there's some like softer skills that people have lost. And I don't know if it's because of the pandemic and people forgot how to be human because they were like locked up in the lockdown, or if there was things happening before that because of tech. And I'm
Well,
in the tech, but like the tech makes it easier for you to talk to somebody on your phone than actually get up and go to their house.
Well,
or get up and or even call them on the phone. You use your phone instead of actually physically having an interaction.
yeah. I mean, you brought up the pandemic, and I've been an online coach since before it was the designer thing to do. Um, and whether it was phone sessions because my client was out of state, and then Zoom and all the things. But what I have seen is that, yes, right, there's all these like micro courses, and this one to many aspect. Like, I have a group, but it's small, it's intimate, and sometimes it's bigger, but it's set up differently. But anyway, there's this one to many, but there's also this shift, right? People don't read paragraphs anymore. I mean, I don't even enjoy creating most of my content anymore, because it's like, if I want anybody to read it, because if I put together like an APA style article, people scroll right by. They might read the opening paragraph,
Yeah,
but they don't have the attention span anymore to read what, in their opinion, would be a short novel when it's just a regular article.
yeah,
Right?
that's
Like, the
frustrating.
articles aren't even articles anymore. They're more like a blog, and a blog is like a post, and a post is like a ad.
Yeah,
I,
it's
I,
just
I don't know, like that whole change.
bulleted points. Yeah, everybody's looking for the cliff notes. You know, like nobody wants to read Moby Dick. Like I growing up as a child in the '70s. I'm actually reading it all the way through.
Yeah,
And I,
totally.
went to Bowdoin College, and I had to read a lot, like, to get through that school. I mean, you read the level of reading, and I hear kids today complaining. I'm like, you don't understand how much I had to read.
Well, because
And I,
everyone will read it for them, right? Like, it's out loud. I had somebody tell me point blank that they get their mental health from TikTok.
yeah, that's the thing. It's like the 30-second, 15-second, 90-second, like nobody has. And I've seen, like, my daughter's a 25 something. I don't want to put her down, but she's got her video game on, her cell phone on, and her laptop and her Surface. Right, all those things. I'm like, what are you doing? I say, which one are you using? Like, you're on like four different things open, and I'm like, how can you? I guess that's just way it works. It's like they're getting drawn to so many different inputs. I'm like, okay, how can you finish anything?
Well, and so they're taking in all of this stuff, and we've got a lot of knowledge, which is great. Like, more power to them, like, yay, awesome. Because I also have children ranging from 41 to 28. And then I have grandchildren ranging from 17 to 3. So I'm not stepping on any toes either. And sure, because I also see plenty of people that I work with that come to work with me that are in that same boat, and they're in their 40s to their 60s, right? Excuse me. But and it's fine. Again, that I'll go back to my beginning, which was, what's the emotional purpose? So if we're consuming a bunch of knowledge but not gaining a practical application in our life, like a way for it to serve us, like, I run into people all the time that can recite things. They know the psychological things, right? They'll say, oh, I know Julian Rotter's locus of control theory. Cool beans. How are you using that in your life? I don't
Yeah,
see it serving you,
yeah,
right? Like, so it's about the application. You can know all kinds of stuff intellectually. You can be highly intelligent genius, but if you're not actually putting it to work, it's like buying a Lamborghini, parking it in the garage, never turning it on. Like, that engine isn't going to be good forever if you don't ever use
yeah.
it.
The way I look at it is kind of like the blue book exam at Bowdoin versus like an SAT, like, or an oral exam, like, where I had to actually talk to my professor and in my own words, and not use the multiple choice, show that I actually understood what we learned that semester in my own words, apply everything I learned, which
Yeah.
actually would prove that I actually did, rather than having just rote memory and not actually really being able to apply it. And
Yeah.
I think it's that kind of lost liberal arts kind of Socratic method, or actually processing something and be able to be creative with it and apply it in your own words.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people are actually, realizing that that's actually important.
Well, and I think that there's a lot of people that know that it is. They just also don't realize that they're not. And that's for me what I come across most of the time. And so it's, they come, well, problem aware, solution seeking, but what they think is the problem isn't really the root. And I don't want to sound cliche, get to the root of the problem, because
Mhm.
people, just a lot of things have become whitewashed because the world has learned the word. You know, I can talk to somebody for a half hour trying to convince them that they are not a narcissist, but because they have self-diagnosed, they're, anyway. But so words are not being used appropriately. So I just, I hate to say, but um, if we're really looking to really improve, we want to make sure that there isn't an emotional purpose for something outside of us, right? To bring us peace, joy, comfort, relief, value, validity, worthiness. I don't know, right? Like, keep adding your adjectives. And so that we're getting that from within, that there's this presence, that it's whatever that emotion is that's coming up for me right now. I don't need to run and hide, that I get to greet it with open arms, even if it's uncomfortable. I know how to sit in and move through it, that that it's okay to be vulnerable, open, honest, genuine, transparent, and authentic. And all things we do is true assertiveness. And people don't realize that. So when we're looking at external things for our worth and our value and our validity, it's time that we find a way to bring that in.
You get back into, the inner truth is
Yeah.
like that emotional, like, stability of,
Mhm.
thing. No, sometimes it's like not always okay. I think sometimes it's okay to actually be in that zone where, like, maybe it's not perfect, right? Maybe I'm going through something, and the tendency is to want to sugarcoat it or magic coat it or find the, like, 0 to 100, like, thing that's going to solve it right now, because we're
Yeah.
in such an immediate age.
Instant gratification.
Yeah, gotta have it solved, right? And, like, nothing's gonna take, it takes the time it takes to do it,
That's
and
probably
so
my biggest challenge right now is when folks come in, they'll come in and I just, case point, right? I just finished every month we focus on a specific topic. So each week we build on it, right? Like, so it's a focus. Anyway, we just had a focus month on stress. And not to dive into the topics, but some of the wanted so much more as far as results. And I'm like, look, man, right? Like, and I reminded them of what it is they came for. And I'm like, so what is what is that thing that you're most proud of, and she shared it. I'm like, that's huge, right? Like, from where you started 30 days ago, that is enormous. Like, can we celebrate that? No, now it makes me worried. Da, da, da. And it's like, okay, right? Like, so this takes time. Like, you're 40 plus years old. You have 40 years of conditioned way of being.
yeah, the
And we
reprogramming's
got
like
we
a
got we got work to do. It's not going to take us 40 years to get it over here where you want it, but
mhm,
it sure is going to take
but
way
it's
more than 30
foundational.
days. More
When
than
you have anything, like, if you have foundational structural change, like, my business and software,
yeah,
sometimes we have a thing called a structural change. Structural change, I mean, the whole table, the structure of the code has to get redone versus, like, a
yeah,
non-structural change, I'm just changing values in the table. Versus a structural change, I'm adding columns into the table,
yeah.
taking columns out of the table. And so, I like, a lot of times people don't realize, well, to just change the values in the table, that's not going to take that much. But if I have to take a column out or add columns in, That's
Yeah.
going to take some time. And that's why I think reprogramming your brain, I can kind of map it to the same idea. And I think it can work in the same way. And it's like the expectation shouldn't be that it's like a value change versus a structural change.
Yeah. And people are so, maybe my final analogy, we'll see, right? But if you're at point A and your aspiration is point Z, and you're standing there, you're looking at Z, man, you still got B through Y, right? Like, and you can't go from B to Z either, right? Like, you got to go from A to B, from B to C. And sometimes you have to make tweaks and adjustments. Maybe D, E, and F need to be lowercase, while J, K, and L need to be uppercase. I don't know, right? But you got to be flexible and be able to do it. So you got to quit future tripping, right? That
Yeah.
pressure filled, anxiety inducing, da da da. When's it going to be ready? When's it going to be ready? I tell people all the time, like, I'm working on this, right? Like, moving my platform completely. I don't know how long it's going to take me. I'm doing it myself, right? Like, I'll let you know every time I get something done on the new platform, and because I'm going to close it down on that one, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, I don't know, right? Go with the
Everybody wants it
flow.
yesterday. Everybody wants it yesterday, but it's like you got to be in today. Like,
Yeah.
like
And I refuse to put pressure on myself to perform, because my first job is to show up for myself, my spouse, my family, my dogs, my clients, right? Like that's first and foremost, because if the whole thing crashed, like, we could still get together. We could still do the work. We don't need the video. We don't need the this, the that, the bells and whistles. Didn't
yeah,
have it when I started,
yeah.
right? So, it's just, what's important, right? Like, wake up in the morning and enjoy your first breath.
Yeah, I think everybody's like on a stage. Like musicians, we feel this. We have a stagecraft, right? Like you go on stage, your stage self is not usually like your regular self that everybody sees you. When you go out on a stage, you have kind of a mask.
Mm.
You can't always be that person's on stage rest of the day. Mick Jagger isn't who he is on stage in his day. He sounds like a business guy. When you see him
Oh, yeah,
on stage, he's the he's Mick Jagger. When you actually talk to him, he sounds like he's a businessman, you know?
that's awesome.
So it's like, yeah, sometimes you're not able to be that self, and sometimes you get it. I think people have to be aware.
Nobody wants me walking out this door, out of my office door, and bringing my mental health, behavioral psych self out there to tell them, right? Like, and I don't. Soon as I close down, man, I go out there and I'm like, woo, skipping my steps, smile on my face, singing a song, making dinner. Unless I don't feel well, then it might be, hey, I'm going to sit on the couch, pet the dog. But it's
Mhm.
whatever I need, right, in that time and space. So I think we could give ourselves some grace. And
I think it's important.
emotional performance requires emotional agility, but it also requires that willingness, that desire to experience living better, different. I'm saying I'm gonna have this. I am going to make it look, feel, and be however I want it to. Watch me.
Well, the way I look at it also is like maturity is something that's like, like it's evolutionary. Like you like sometimes I run into guys, like jazz musicians or like they're elderly jazz musicians and they still feel like I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Right. And when you see a guy like he's like 80 and he still says he's learning, you're like, wow, this guy is willing to have that mindset, right? Where somebody else that's like 25 could think like they know everything. I'm like, really? But like this guy doesn't think he knows everything, but you do.
Well, so that's still again with the locus of control. So when we look at what has the person been told their whole life? Wow, you're great, you're wonderful, you're all these great things. So if everybody's always showering, they become accustomed to needing that external reward, expecting it. So if they've got a boss that doesn't tell them they're the best thing since sliced bread, they get actually like, what, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know I don't know, right? Like,
Yeah.
because so in parenting, got years of experience there, right? Like in parenting, our job is to, take this child who's dependent on us to change their diapers, feed them a bottle, whatever, when they cry, to learn to pull up their own pants, crawl, walk, go to the bathroom, whatever. But here's where we fall short. They fall down, they scrape their knee. What do? We give them a popsicle, external reward, right? Like self-soothe, not self-soothing. I mean, like an external soothing.
Yeah.
If they, at school, they get gold stars, they get medals, they get all this stuff. So now they get out here and they're 40 years old and they're not getting an achievement certificate.
You get the gold star.
Gotta have my gold star. Oh my gosh, this is my favorite one. It's my birthday. Where are all my presents? And why are you not making me a cake? It's your birthday. Go celebrate it how you want. Right? Like, I don't bring you into the world. Go talk to your mom and dad. Right? Like,
yeah.
Right. But anyway, so there's just so much of the imbalance. And I think,
well, I think everybody, being a Buddhist, I'm always trying to look for the balance, and I know I'm not going to find it every day, and it's a work in progress. They and I think that's where people get confused because they want to be able to get to it, and then I realize that I might not get to it in this life. So it's a totally different, like mine says, like I could try to get to it as close as I can. It might be the next life, right?
yeah.
Like, and that right there is like, that's hard if you're in a Western mindset. That right there, it hits the wall, and you're like, oh, I can't deal with that.
Well, I love an expanded consciousness, right? Like that's just, it's like, even if you don't know it, or you're, the thought of the possibility that if I don't get to it in this life, I have the potential for it to happen in the next one. Like if that doesn't make you take a big, deep breath and go, wow, cool. Like I can relax now and actually enjoy the minute that I'm actually sitting in. Huh? Like if that doesn't work for you, like, I don't know, man,
Yeah. I try to put it out there, but I want to thank you for being on the show. I do have to go to another one, but we do have your URL, go1hub.com, consultation time. And I want to let people know that will be fully clickable in the description of the podcast. We've been live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Oh, thank you. And yes, feel free, guys. Just jump on. I'd love to have a good collaborative conversation. So just that's a link to my calendar. Just hop right in.
Well, thank you. And we do encourage people to click that. And that is something we hope that everybody tries to do that. And I want to thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you so much. Many blessings.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.